Good evening, and welcome to Lodi the World, where I will be interviewing and talking with local leaders and influential individuals about Lodi and how it fits into the world. Tonight, our guest is Vince Breunig, who has just taken over the role of District Administrator for the School District of Lodi. Thank you for being here tonight, Vince.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. So you've been in the position for a month and a half.
Yes.
First question is, what is the Breunig administration going to be like, and how will it be different from your predecessors?
I don't know how different it will be. My goal is obviously to continue to pull the community in and try to craft a vision based on what this community wants their schools to be. I was hoping when I took this position, one of the conversations I had when I first applied for this position was doing what's called a strategic plan and bringing in stakeholders and talking about, because it's not just Breinig's vision for the district, like what's our community's vision for our district? That's been kind of pushed off a little bit with some other things that are going on right now in the world. But obviously we want to continue to be a leader in education. We are known in education as being pretty progressive in the things that we do and try to do and provide high quality education for all of our students and provide world-class opportunities for our kids, not only in the classroom, but through extracurriculars, through travel experiences, and things like that. And we want to continue to grow those and expand those and look at new opportunities. For example, we have really pushed the envelope in the area of STEAM the last few years. 5 years ago, we didn't have much for STEAM programming. Now, Mr. Potter, who's our tech integrator, and myself are doing one of the keynote addresses up at a Slate conference, a technology conference about STEAM in Lodi, and it's been really well received. People really sign up for it. So,
yeah. What are some of the highlights of where you think that we really need to push more? So obviously the STEAM. For those of you that watching that don't know what STEAM is,
yes, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So it's kind of incorporating some of those classes and those thoughts together, because really the only place you have science by itself is in school, right? Science happens, it's incorporated with English, it's incorporated with technology, it's incorporated with math and life. And for us to try to teach that more in a hands-on experience. So we've been really pushing that at all different levels.
So what other things, for me growing up here and going to school, it was agriculture was a big thig. Is that still?
Yeah, we still have a really robust ag program and FFA program. So absolutely, it's a big push for us. But we also have a lot of kids, obviously, who are going to the world of work and going on to school for all sorts of different things. So we try to continue to push kids and open opportunities for them. Right. Our goal is always to have. As a high school principal, I say the same thing as a district administrator. Our goal is to open doors for people. Right. We want them when they leave high school, all the doors are open. Right. Because you just don't know what opportunities come to you through your life. You want to make sure those doors are open. To kind of push or touch base on the question, areas that we really should be looking at a little bit more, we really need to continue to focus on our social emotional well-being of our students, especially this time with everything going on in the world. But that's an area that we definitely need to continue to build and grow throughout our curriculum and throughout our school district. We need to continue to work on equity issues as well, making sure that a lot of times the focus is on equal, and we need to make sure that we are providing kids what they need, not equal to everything, but making sure that every student's getting what they need when they need it, and continuing to look at some of that things through an equity lens, and are we being fair and equitable in some of the things that we're doing.
I know that since I was in school, I graduated in '87. Our city and our school has become so much more diverse.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see little small town Wisconsin, Lodi, with such a diversity, not only in ethnicities, but in experiences, and people that have come here from far away and are now experiencing it. Those children are experiencing that. How are you able to integrate that? We talked a little bit before this about translation and language difficulties.
Right. So we do have some students, obviously, who come here who don't speak English. Right. So that's a struggle for us to try to make sure that we are providing a great opportunity for those kids to move forward as well. And as you said, that's a growing population for us and for our state. And then trying to mesh that with people who have known Lodi all their life. They've grown up here, they've raised their family here, and now their kids are here, right? And they're staying. And then you also have people who've moved here, like from around the area. Like, for example, I grew up in Sauk Prairie, Roxbury, so not just on Highway Y, right? But a different growing up town experience, very similar to Lodi. But then you have people who moved here from all over the state, just because it's a great school district, a great community. It's close to Madison. You get the natural resources of Devil's Lake and Rock of Gibraltar, but you're still close enough that you can get to Madison for some of the cultural things that you maybe want to be involved in, or jobs and things like that. So it's kind of melding all those together, right? So those come with all different experiences and background experiences, and that's kind of where the equity piece plays in. What do our kids need, and how much support do they need from us? Some of them have a lot of support, like they come from a household that has 2 college graduates as parents, and have a lot of support. Not that kids in those situations sometimes don't need extra support, but then we also have students who are coming from single parent backgrounds, or parents are working a couple, 2, 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and don't have that background to help their children as much in school. So we need to help step in and provide that extra support, right? So those kids have the opportunity as well, because we have all our kids have a wonderful opportunity when they leave Lodi.
From a management standpoint, just looking at the, not the students, but the whole facility and the rest of that, what do you think is going to be the biggest obstacle for you in the coming years?
Well, right now it's going to be our response to COVID, right? If us bringing, that's kind of the elephant in the room. We'll get to, right? So bringing students back in is going to be a significant challenge for us. With our facilities, all the different things we need to put in place, and we're working on putting in place, and making sure that that's a possibility. We are in a really good spot facility-wise right now with the passing of the last referendum. The new primary school on the hill is phenomenal. We did a lot of different upgrades to the different schools. There was referendum funds left over because the contingency fund wasn't used at the primary school level. So there was a lot of other projects put together, like a greenhouse at the high school, more STEAM labs, and we talked about like that. So facility-wise, we're great in many of those areas. We're putting a new turf field in, which hopefully will be finished here at the beginning of September. And the community really have supported the school district. As we look forward, we're going to have to look at an operating referendum is going to have to come forward again in a couple of years. That's just how schools are funded in Wisconsin at this point. We're going to have to look at what do we want to do with green space, right? We want our kids outside, we want our kids moving, we want our kids doing things. Green space is an issue, and if, as you said, you're a lifelong Lodi resident, you know how wet this town is, right? So you go down the field on Highway 60, it's not usable for a lot of times of the year. So, do we want to put more money into that field to make it more usable? Or do we want to look at how can we bring, right now we play our varsity baseball games out in Dane. Do we want to try to bring varsity baseball back into town and create some more fields and things up with some of the space that we have at the primary school? So again, that comes back to that strategic planning process. Like, what is the vision that our community would like to see our schools become, right? It can't be Vince Breunig's vision, right? It's our community school. I just need to lead the process that we have that conversation. And obviously with COVID going on, that makes it a much more difficult conversation to have. So we need to figure out if we push that conversation off a little bit, or if we try to do some of it virtually, or how we do that. So
which does bring us to the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I know that's a lot of the people are wanting, more personal answers versus, sitting and listening to the board. So I already did get a couple of questions emailed to me. Now, I'm not going to say names. Anybody that comments on there, you're going to be seen. The biggest question I'm sure everyone is asking is, what are the parameters going to be for opening up?
For coming back. Yeah, so we shared a document with the board a couple weeks ago, and we actually recreated it. And like, what would be a sample for steps coming back? And we did that just so the board have an idea, like we want to put something like this together. The Department of Health and Human Services has been promising us a document like that for the last couple of weeks. It was supposed to come out this Monday.
Is that the State Department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. Kind of giving guidance, not to give guidance like this is what you have to do, like if you should go virtual or if you should go, but like when you're talking about moving from one type of instructional model to the other, these are the things you should factor in. And so we're waiting for that information, right? So part of that's going to have to be local case numbers, like what's our infection rate, what's our transmission rate, community transmission rate, and things of that nature. So we're waiting for that document. And that's one of the very big frustrations with COVID is we wait a lot for guidance, or we wait for direction. We get a lot of guidance. And part of that comes back to, especially with the Wisconsin Department of Health and Human Services, falls back to that Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court has pretty much told them that they can't give direction. So they have given guidance to local county health departments. Local health departments are taking that guidance and either taking it, accepting it, doing their own thing, and it's made this patchwork, which has made it difficult for people in my position and people, especially when you're in between counties like we are. If you have 2 or 3 counties in your school district.
I was going to bring that up. Now, you have to deal with Dane County.
Yeah.
We're mostly in Columbia County, but because of Dane and that area out there, you're in Dane County also. Dane County is very different than Columbia County. And how are you balancing that information?
Yeah, so that's I get that question a lot. Like, why are you listening to Dane County? And sometimes I have to answer like, remember we do have part of our districts in Dane County, and sometimes I get an email back like, oh yeah.
Dane's in Dane County.
So for example, when they had their masking order, like, how's that going to work if you have buses where they cross into Dane County, we're going to make our kids put our mask on, and then they could take them, so it just causes some logistical pieces. What I would say is one of the reasons I've had more conversation with Dane County is I'm part of a Dane County superintendent's group. I'm part of a Columbia County superintendent's group. I'm part of like a CISA superintendent's group. Dane County Public Health sits at the table in the superintendent's group in Dane County. They will sit and be a part of that conversation. They'll answer questions, kind of like you were doing right here. Like, and I'm impressed by they'll sit. They don't always give the answer, obviously we want, but she's put on the hot seat a lot and tries to work with it. But they also have more resources, right? So you turn to Columbia County, they have 4 or 5 public health nurses trying to deal with this and everything else they have to deal with. So the guidance from Columbia County is not there. It just isn't. So, which makes it really difficult because they don't have the resources to give it. It's not because they don't want to. So Columbia County will constantly refers us back to the state. Like, what guidance do you want to give us locally? Look at the state guidance. And when I talk to the state says, talk to your local health department. And it's just a circle. Even in the same call. I mean, I'm in the same call with people from the state, and they'll just go in a circle because they want to look at local data. But Columbia County, again, it really struggles with some of that just because of again, they don't have the resources to do that. We're a smaller county. And so Dane County has given more guidance. And we also have a lot of families that live in Dane County or live and work in Dane County. We have, but the transmission rate is pretty similar. I mean, the numbers in Dane County are higher, but there are 500,000 more people that live in Dane County, right? So like between the month before we made this decision, the cases doubled in Dane County and the cases doubled in Columbia County. Between when we made this decision on the 29th of July and August 10th, there was 50 more cases in Columbia County. That was 20% of all the cases they've had. It happened in the last 10 days. So that's the issue with this virus is it's exponential, right?
Yeah.
And that's the concern is where that curve is going. And hopefully the masking order in Dane County will help. It seems to be, and hopefully now the statewide one will help here as well.
Now, the students last week expressed their opinions down.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do the faculty and staff, have you got an idea of what their feelings are?
Sure. So they're torn, right? So they want to come back and do what's best for kids, right? They want kids back. But they also are concerned about kids' safety, being in a classroom. You know, right now, most places who are doing work, you know, I reached out to some people I know who are in different businesses and asked them, how are you working right now? You know, construction, things like that. We're, you know, if we're outside doing construction, we're doing construction. But if we're having a meeting, it's mostly virtual, right? And to talk to our kids, you know, if you're talking about coming back to a traditional school setting, you're talking about classes of 20 to 24 with one adult in 900 square foot room. Well, it brings some concerns, right? So now the transmission issue and things of that nature. So, you know, staff are torn. They want kids, just like everybody else. We all want to be back to normal, right? We all long and yearn for normal, what our normal high school day would be, like a normal primary school would be. But we also have to balance that with what's going on in the world and what's safe for their families, what's safe for our kids, what's safe for you know, extended families, our community, and that's where the rubber hits the road. So I mean, I hear from, just like I hear from parents who are really thrilled that we're going virtual. I hear from some staff who are really thankful that we're going virtual. I hear from parents who are vehemently opposed that we shouldn't be going virtual. We should have kids right back in school. And I hear from staff who aren't vehemently opposed probably, but would really, really want to have kids back in school, right?
Now, you did virtual for, was it 3 months?
Yeah, so the board is going to have us on their agenda.
I mean, previously.
Oh, we did, yes. We did it in March.
So it was March, April, May.
Yeah, so March, yeah, so I became superintendent on Monday, the 9th of March, and we closed schools on Friday. So that was when I was officially named superintendent, and on that Friday was the last day we had actual in-person classes. So yeah, maybe it's my fault.
So you've got that experience, and I know that a lot of that was figuring it out and ramping up and such like that. How have the students been coping with it in an academic sense?
Yeah. So it was a struggle, right? So I thought our families did a phenomenal job supporting their kids. Our kids did a phenomenal job engaging. Our staff did a phenomenal job in pivoting to an online system. None of them have been trained to do online education, and we did it overnight. We knew that if we were going to go back online, we need to do a better job, right? And we need to engage kids. So in a much more robust educational experience. And so at the end of last year, we spent 4 days training staff. Like, we need to be more consistent. For example, we use at the 3 through 12 level, we use a Google Classroom feature. Well, some teachers would name their Google Classroom feature Mr. Breunig's class. Other ones would name it like U.S. history. And it was hard for parents. Like, if you had 2 or 3 kids to kind of go through that, well, we need to name that, that's something simple. That needs to be a consistent way we name things so it's easy for parents and consistent where things are and for students. So working through some of those trainings and trying to be more consistent, and then also really heard from teachers, teachers too, teachers, parents, and kids. Some like some flexibility. Most of them really wanted more structure. Like, we need a structured day. And when we first went online, our concern was too much structure, not knowing what was going to happen with COVID. And we wanted to create more flexibility. And we still have to have that in our system, but the plan that we have put forward now has much more structure, much more live interaction between teachers and students, some live instruction, but then live breakout small groups where you're working with smaller groups of kids, providing instruction, things of that nature. So much more robust in what we did in the spring.
In the spring, up till now, have the kids been keeping up academically? Has it impacted their education?
Yeah. Well, I would think, yes, absolutely impacted their education in the spring. There's no question about it, because we did not get through all the things that we normally would get through in a normal year. And again, going back to the social emotional health piece of it, you're dealing with a pandemic, right? None of us have ever lived through a pandemic, unless somebody in your audience is, over 100 some years old, right? So so we haven't lived through a pandemic and the stress that causes on families and the shutdown of our state at the time and joblessness and how it impacted had a significant impact on our kids, because it has a significant impact on us, right, as adults. So it's going to impact our kids. And then not having their normal summer activities, not having the Lodi Fair, like not having summer ball or, different, being able to go to the Devils and do what you normally did, has an impact. So absolutely, that's a concern. And it's a concern moving into this year that are we going to be able to get through everything that we got through in a normal year? Probably not, right? So we need to make sure that we are really focusing on what's the real essentials moving forward for each of our kids in each of their grades, and working together as a team to make that as robust as possible, and then having pieces in place, a safety net, better safety nets in place for the kids who are struggling. And that's really where the online enhanced part comes in. So like looking at, in the spring, we couldn't have kids in the building at all. You just couldn't. Now we can. So looking at that enhanced part, like looking at some of our kids with disabilities, can we bring them in, and provide more support for some of our kids who are English language learners? Can we provide more support? I mean, can you imagine trying to learn? It's tough enough if you can't speak the language. Now you're trying to do it online, right? So we need to. So those are some of our neediest students, and that also helps us work on how do we get kids back in school? How does this work? What's the we try to do some of that with some of our summer sports things, and some of our we had a summer school program for a couple grades as well, like practicing some of these things on a smaller scale, so we can slowly start to ramp them up.
Now, I talked with Michael at the summer school program.
Mike Pisani?
Yeah, Mike Pisani. And I have not gotten back to him since that was supposed to have started. Yeah. So how did that go? First of all, did it go?
It did, yeah. So we had a group of kids come into 4K and kids come into kindergarten, two small groups, one of 9, one of 11. Positives and negatives. I mean, so kids were excited to be in school, right? Our staff was excited to have them. And you get to see the joy of kids being in a room and getting to play. The negatives are, again, when everybody wants to go back to yearn for normal. You have kids spaced 6 feet apart, all facing one direction, which is what we do usually at that level. Usually have centers and playtime and carpet time. Can't have that, right? You have shared toys. Can't have that. So they're set up, they're in mask, and some of them do real well with mask. Other ones are constantly grabbing a bottle of water because that's when you can take it off, and they're constantly out of water, right? And if you've been around kids who are that age, they like to hug, right? Mm-hmm. And so they'll come up and they'll hug each other, and they're like, no. And so that leaves a mark too. Like, what do you mean I can't? Why? And or like when the teacher has to work close with them, you're supposed to put a face shield on as well. And our teacher said, it's just heartbreaking sometimes. The kids are like, please don't put that on. Like those type of things. So there's positives, obviously, because you can do more, but there's also some drawback that it's just not the same. And there is some social emotional toll on our kids and our staff on how difficult that is to maintain that social distancing and not touching the same things. And even teaching, like I went up there a day, popped in, and one of the things I was in a meeting with Columbia County and DPI. They're like, well, one of the things you can really do to help this is teach from 6 feet away. Like, are you kidding me? Have you ever tried to teach I don't care what level, that you're teaching from 6 feet away? I walked in that room, and within 30 seconds, there was 3 kids like, hey, come over here and look at this. Look what I did, right? And you can't do that from 6 feet away. You got to walk over close, and so it makes it really difficult. So there was some positives, and we also learned some things. Like we had a screening tool in place. So like every family every day they have to check off certain things and send it in before kids come to school. Well, we wanted to try that with smaller groups of kids versus trying it with 1,500 kids at once, and then it doesn't work or something crashes. So, so we've learned things that work and things that didn't work so well, and we're trying to incorporate them. So as we start bringing some kids back in, we can do it effectively and safely.
Now there are some difficult questions that I know you don't have answers to right now.
Yeah.
But when you get into the point where it's been decided that we can come back in some form,
yep.
There's going to be there'll be the social distancing, and there'll be the masks, and there'll be that sort of stuff. What sort of criteria will there be for, no, you can't come in today? Or, you know, what things like, you know, fevers and coughs and...
So yeah, that's the issue, right? So that's one of the issues that when we start this way, one of the reasons we're starting this way is the consistency of education. If we come back, it's one of the things that I see in the board sees, and it's just the disruption, right? So I use this example at the board meeting tonight. Why do I think there's disruptions? I've been in schools for 25 years. What happens the first 3 weeks of school? Some kids bring in a cold, it kind of gets passed around, some of the staff get sick, but not like they push through it, right? It's like, it's not a bad cold, we're going to come in. Well, that's not allowed, right? If you have a headache and you know, it's not, you know, or you have a cough and a runny nose, you're out of school for 10 days. Or you have to go get a COVID test, right? And if you get a COVID test, you got to wait till if your symptoms, it comes back negative, you're still out 10 days. And if it comes back positive, then you're out like 10 days. And then now we're contact tracing who you were with and those type of things. And other kids are out or other staff members are out. And that's like the staffing issue I worry about. Like, I want to make sure I have quality staff in front of kids. I worry about, okay, my staff member's quarantined for 14 days. I now have a room full of kids. Now what do I do? Right? And because I have subs who said, some subs who said, yep, we'll be there. And other subs like, you can call me back when COVID's gone. So that's a concern. Like, so we have, as I was saying, the screening protocol, like you have to say, have I had a fever? Have I had any of these symptoms? And if you check yes to any of those, you can't come to school, right? Which will be hard. And it'll be hard for families to, you know, I'm getting ready to go to work and my son has a slight cough and a runny nose. And is that a normal slight cough and a runny nose that is just a little sick? Or, you know, so that's a really difficult spot families are going to be in and schools are going to be, because we're going to be mandated to send kids home for that.
Now, if the kid has to stay home for 2 weeks, will there be an online contingent so they can keep up?
That's the hope. Degree? Yeah. So we would. That's why another reason we kind of want to start with the online, like, as our base, so we can refer back to that. Like, so if a class gets quarantined, we can hopefully, if the teacher's not, if it is just being quarantined and not ill, can they teach from home and, you know, still provide that education online? And we already have the systems in place to do that. Versus we're in person and now we're all thrown into online, right? Because I see that if we come back, there will be that disruption. So having that basis there. We also know if we come back and we will have to survey students as we're getting closer to families, as we get closer to doing that, there would be a certain percentage of families that aren't going to send their kids, right? And so then we're going to have this online contingent, and depending on the percentage, right? So if we have 5 fifth grade teachers and 20% of our families say, well, we're not sending our child, well, I can have one of those teachers teach online and the other 4 teach in person, of that nature. So those are things we are working on and continue to work on.
And then the last one that kind of comes up to mind is, you know, California, before all of this, so about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think it was, mandated that all students must be vaccinated in order to attend. Mm-hmm. When a vaccine comes out, is that something that is, again, how strict are you going to be about this sort of thing?
So I don't, that's a good question for legal counsel. To be honest with you, I mean, it's like, for example, I would love that everybody would get flu vaccination this fall, right? So, because that's one of the concerns is, you know, if you have symptoms of the flu, it looks a lot like COVID, so you're going to be out of school. And we don't know what's going to happen if you have the flu and COVID, right, for kids or adults, because the flu season hasn't hit. So we will highly recommend that, just like we do all our other vaccinations. Kids, you know, right now families can opt out.
What's the standards for opting out?
It's just, I would have to go back and look at that. That's not my area of expertise. I have a school nurse for that. But there's some certain criteria that families can make that choice And that's some of the concerns we saw probably leading into, as you said, California and some of the other places, because we were starting to see some of these communicable diseases come back that had pretty much been eradicated because people have not been vaccinating their children. And then, so that's been an issue. So that's the other concern, right, is that there's some thought that we could have a vaccine hopefully by early next year. But are there going to be families who are like, they just created this vaccine, I want to wait and see what happens, right? Understandably, right? Your safety of your child and yourself is, you want to make sure it's safe anytime you put anything in your body. So I understand that. So it's, I was listening to somebody the other day talk about this pandemic, and said, we're in about the top of the fourth inning, right? It seems like it's been forever, and it has, but we're probably not even halfway through, right? We still have the flu season, and we're still waiting for a vaccine. Hopefully a vaccine will be done. The Russians supposedly have one, I heard, so we'll see. But you know, there's a couple in clinical trials, and I know they're hopeful, and I am hopeful too, right, that we can get this under control, and that people, and I think the masking will help if people continue to do that.
All right. Are there any questions from online? No? Okay, didn't think so, but the option's there. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for watching, whether live or later. This has been Lodi on the World. I'm Blaise Miskulin. 再见.